Hello everyone, my name is Jasmine Perez, and I'm going to share with you the overall history of the smallpox epidemic. Smallpox was one of the world's deadliest diseases. The disease spread along trade routes all around the world, going from Egyptian merchants through the Arab world with the Crusades, all the way to the Americas with the Spanish and Portuguese conquests. Since then, it has killed an estimated 300 to 500 million people in the 20th century alone. So, what is smallpox exactly? Smallpox is an acute contagious disease caused by the variola virus, also known as VARV. The disease was considered an endemic and pandemic that caused high mortality rates all across the continent. Smallpox is caused by one of the two closely related strains, variola major and variola minor. Variola major is severe and is the most common form of smallpox. It has a more extensive rash and a higher fever. There are 4 types of variola major. Looking at this chart, ordinary was the most common with a fatality rate of 30%. The second form is called variola minor, the less common and much less severe disease, which caused fewer symptoms, less extensive rash, less scarring, and fewer fatalities, with a death rate of 1% or less. How is it transmitted? It can be transmitted from contact with another person, through the air, or from contact with contaminated items such as blankets and clothes. What are the symptoms? A person with smallpox goes through several stages as the disease progresses. Each stage has its own signs and symptoms. The incubation period can range from 7 to 19 days, but usually lasting between 10 to 14 days. During this period, you usually will not show symptoms and feel normal. The initial symptoms after incubation starts 2 to 4 days later. Symptoms of smallpox start with a high fever, headache, fatigue, body ache, and sometimes vomiting. You may be contagious at this point. A few days later, you will develop a flat rash that starts in your mouth and spreads, turning into raised bumps and pus-filled blisters that crust, scab, and fall off after 3 weeks, leaving a pitted scar. You are the most contagious once the rash begins and will remain contagious until the last smallpox scabs fall off. Those who survive from smallpox usually are left with severe scars on the face, arms, and legs. In worst cases, blindness and disfigurements. Are there any treatment? Before variolation began in the 11th century in China, the medical community treated smallpox in ways that they understood at the time. One medieval physician, Dr. Senheim, treated his patients by allowing no fire in the room, leaving the windows permanently open, drawing the bedcloths no higher than the patient's waist, and prescribing 12 bottles of small beer every 24 hours. But as of now, with modern research and medicine, there are no proven treatments for smallpox. There are 3 antiviral therapies that have shown effectiveness against poxviruses in animals. However, their effectiveness in treating smallpox disease in humans is unknown. Vaccination prevents or lessens the severity of the disease if given within 2 to 3 days of the initial exposure. So how did smallpox come to exist? The origin of smallpox is unknown. The disease was initially understood from the 4th up to the 16th century as being attributed to the wrath of gods, goddesses, and demons. Many countries such as China, India, and Africa had gods that were thought to be the source of smallpox, and performed rituals or created religious shrines to try and appease these gods. For example, Shitala Mata is the Indian goddess of smallpox. It is said that she flew into such a rage of seeing how ugly she was when she contracted smallpox, that she went into the sky and devoured half of the body of the moon. When the chief god, her father, saw this, he said, "I will give you all humanity to eat, but leave the moon alone." After that, she attacked men instead and gave them smallpox. Another example is Shipona, the West African god of smallpox. It is believed that the supreme god gave authority over various kingdoms of the world to his sons. His eldest Shipona was given the control of the earth, who nourished men by giving him all the grains of the earth. But when he punished, he caused those grains that the men had eaten to come out on their skins, known as smallpox. But with modern times, it is now believed to have come from northeastern Africa around 10,000 BC. Their results show that the 2 primary VARV genome sequences likely diverged from an ancestral African rodent-borne variola-like virus either 16,000 or 68,000 years before present. This means that smallpox may have even occurred earlier than previously believed. But the earliest proof for the disease comes from the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses. His mummified remains showed raised bumps on his face, resembling smallpox found on faces of mummies from the 18th and 20th Egyptian dynasties. Efforts for eradication. Before modern medicine, people tried to find different ways to prevent smallpox. In ancient practice, many cultures believed in the red treatment, where red colored objects would combat smallpox. The belief that red treatment extended to places like China, India, Turkey, England, France, Italy, Sweden, and more. With prevention came along attempts for treatment. Variolation was the first effective preventative measure dating back to the 11th century. According to a book called The Correct Treatment of Smallpox, a Buddhist named Ome Shine would grind up smallpox scabs and blow the powder into nostrils of healthy people. She noticed that those who survived never got it again. By the 1700s, variolation evolved where doctors were taking infectious material like pus or scabs of smallpox victims and scratching into the arms of healthy people. This would then cause them to be immune of smallpox after experiencing milder symptoms. It was until English physician Edward Jenner found a modern solution known as a vaccine in 1796. Throughout the 19th and 20th century, there were large vaccination campaigns like mass vaccinations and surveillance containment that helped eradicate smallpox. On May 8, 1980, the 33rd World Health Assembly officially declared the world free of the disease.